welcome back to Tutor on a Bike. So today I'm just going to take you for a little run along a country road, along the riverside for a part, and have a chat. So this is going to be the start of a series of 3 videos that I'm going to do for Remembrance Day. And what I want to do is to talk about some people that I have personal experience with and the experiences that they went through during conflict, and what I want to do is just to remember them. That's what Remembrance Day is all about, after all. So the first person that I want to talk about, now I'm recording this in the summer because in all probability I won't be able to do this in the winter time. The first person I want to talk about is my Uncle Bob. So Robert Doig. Now I don't have very many pictures of him. I'll put a picture of him up now, taken at a Christmas dinner. He's got a Christmas cracker crown on his head. But that was my Uncle Bob, actually my great uncle. He's my father's uncle. And Bob was, I think, he must have been in his 80s when that photograph was taken, a long time ago. He died when I was, I think, round about 17 or 18. And Bob was an absolute legend of a man. He was never married. He was never married. Of course he was married. He was married to my aunt for over 50 years before she died, and they never had children, so, which is a shame, because Bob was he's just one of these people that is natural with children. He in his 80s he'll be down on the floor playing Legos with the kids, and he was just one of these people. It was such a shame he didn't have children. But I spent a lot of time with Bob. He was fun to be around, even though he was in his 80s, late 70s, early 80s at that stage. But Bob was a soldier, and he fought in the First World War. He was in the Black Watch, and he actually joined when he was 15. He lied about his age and joined the army at 15 in 19... Oh, no, wait a wee minute. Wait till I get this right. Yeah, he was born in 1901. So he joined when he was 15. So he probably joined the army in 1915 or 1916. And he was very good with horses. He grew up with horses, and his family worked for quite a large estate, and he used to handle the horses there when people left school at like 12 years old. So what they did was they put him into the supply section, something like that. I don't know what the proper name of it was, but what they did was he had a horse and a cart. I think it was actually 2 horses and a cart, and they filled him up with ammunition, and he took it from wherever the stores, the battery was, out to the soldiers fighting on the front line. And his comment was, he says, you got loaded up, he says, and you went like hell and hoped you didn't get shot, which is some way of going about it. So unfortunately he wasn't shot. He was hit by shrapnel, by an exploding enemy shell, and it essentially just blew his stomach open. So his intestines were all hanging out, and he was in a bit of a mess. When the shell exploded, I think the horses got spooked, and they saved his life because they headed for home. So they headed back to the depot at no doubt top speed of their own volition, because Bob was unconscious at this stage. But they essentially saved his life because they got him back to the depot, and there was no hospital or anything like that. So what happened was he was put on the table in the blacksmith's workshop, and the blacksmith stitched him up with whatever thread that he had, and pushed his intestines back in, stitched up his stomach, and no anaesthetic. He was unconscious. I don't suppose he would remember it, and there was no antiseptic, and obviously it was in the days before antibiotics and things like that. So a miracle that he didn't get sepsis, or for his wounds to turn septic. But they stitched him up and eventually got him back to some kind of proper medical facility, and he was sent back to Britain. I don't know if I mentioned this was the Somme battle that he was injured in, when so many soldiers were killed. So Bob, I suppose, was one of the lucky ones. But he didn't talk about his experiences much. He did like to talk about the blacksmith that stitched him up. He was quite proud of the fact. In fact, he didn't take much coaxing to show you his scars, which looked like a map of the London Underground. There was lines going everywhere all over his stomach. He had properly been blown apart. But he didn't talk much about his other experiences, because they did affect him very deeply. When he had delivered his ammunition, he was expected to take back fallen soldiers. So if they were wounded, they got the priority to get taken back, and also people who had died. So it wasn't not a pleasant job, as I'm sure you can imagine. So he was injured in 1916 during the Somme. He was taken back to Britain, and he recovered there it took him over a year to recover properly. He got a kind of admin job in the army after that, and obviously when the war ended, he left the army. But actually the clerking job that he got in the army because he wasn't fit to fight helped him in later life, because that's what he was. He was a clerk for the rest of his working life. Now, Bob he came back with his problems. He, like everybody else, I'm sure, you can't see some of the things that he's seen or been through, some of the things that he'd been through without having problems. And Bob took to drink. He was an alcoholic for about 30 years of his life, supported by my aunt. She kind of understood that this was his crutch, if you like, and managed to kind of try and keep him on the straight and narrow. He held down a job, he was fully functioning, until one day in his 40s he said, right, was it 40, must be 50 then, he stopped drinking. He said, that's it, I'm stopping drinking, and became sort of passionate about other things. So he became passionate about football, he became passionate about his garden, and he never touched another drop for probably the last 30 years of his life, which shows a remarkable amount of character, I think. Yes, he had problems, but he overcame them. And that's it, really. He was my Uncle Bob. he was a brilliant man, absolutely great to be around. I was, as I said, 17 or 18 when he died, but he was brilliant with me. I would take every opportunity that I could to spend time with him. He was apparently quite a difficult person to deal with adults. I don't have experience of that, but apparently that's the case, and that's it is what it is. My father's not got a particularly high opinion of Uncle Bob, but I think he was fantastic. He actually gave me his medals, so I've got them in the house. He's got his General Campaign First World War medals, and he gave them to me, which I'm honoured to look after, be the custodian of them, if you will. I'll pass them on to my son when the time comes. So there you go. So that's the first of my series of 3 stories about people who have it was my privilege to know, and my privilege, I suppose, to remember, pass on the stories. They said that the First World War was the war to end wars. Well, we all know that never happened. And it was probably one of the most brutal conflicts that the world has ever seen, and even that still didn't finish it. So, as I said, my privilege to have met him, to have spent a lot of time with him, and a hero, both in terms of what he did during the war, but more so for continuing to live quite a full life after all of that nonsense was over. Yes, he became an alcoholic, and I can't say I blame him. And but he got over it and pulled himself together, and if ever there was a true mark of character, that's it. So there'll be another video tomorrow with another of my relatives, and until then, ride safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.